Hi, everyone. Welcome to the CURES show. I'm Kara Sundlin. We're talking about today how to find out if our kids are adjusting to the back-to-school life, and if they're not, what do we do about it? Because by now, most children have been in for a week or two, so how do you know if everything's going okay? Dr. Laura Saunders is a child psychologist from Hartford Healthcare's Institute of Living, and she's joining me now with her take on what we can do as parents. Welcome, Doctor.
Hello, Kara. Happy Wednesday.
Happy Wednesday. I'm happy to have you and have an expanded conversation on this, as we did a little bit on Great Day. I guess I'm looking from afar and I'm seeing everyone run around the house and scurry and try and remember where things are. And that might be what everyone's doing. But how do you know if your kids are adjusting okay?
So let's talk a little bit about adjustment. We frequently talk about anxiety, but I want to talk more about the concept of adjustment. So adjustment really is the process of adapting to different challenges and expectations. So for families, this is a new school year. No matter what grade your child is in, elementary, middle, or high school, there are new expectations. We also cannot totally get away from the fact that we are still in a global pandemic. And there's additional adjustments. This time last year, there was far greater uncertainty than there is now, but there's still a lot that's looming. So there may be more adjustments and challenges ahead of us. However, we can't really focus on that because we have no control over that. What we need to focus on is whether or not your kids are adjusting now. And so that at this point, they should be settling into the structure and routine of what they need to be doing.
So one of the things you say, if they're not adjusting, in children, it shows up in behavior, acting out, defiance, maybe big emotions.
Yes. So often with children and adolescents, we look at two different categories of behavior. Externalizing behavior, where they show externally what is going on for them on the inside, and internalizing behavior, where they hold on to more sadness or anxiety or internal distress. With younger kids, if they're not adjusting well, you would see more externalizing behavior, greater defiance, still having difficulty getting up in the morning, difficulty with their nighttime routines, complaining a lot about things. So you see more externalizing behavior. Older adolescents, teenagers, high schoolers, you would tend to see more internalizing behaviors, emotional withdrawal, not wanting to do things that they used to like to do, anxiety, but they might not even be telling you about what the anxiety, it just looks like isolation and withdrawal. So it's important to know your child and know A, developmentally where they might be at, but B, what their tendency is anyway.
And I didn't realize this, but we talk, as you said, a lot about anxiety, but adjustment disorder is a common condition that ranges from 3 to 10% of, I guess, kids, what you see in your settings. So what do we do as parents? I'm thinking, especially if that younger kid's externalizing and being defiant and yelling and refusing to do whatever, we might just get tough. But really, we need to look at that as a sign of you are having a hard time, maybe not just trying to give us a hard time?
That's a great distinction, because I do think that there's a piece of labeling and identifying, right? So boy, you've really been giving me a hard time every day this week about getting up in the morning. I'm not sure I really understand. You seem to be going to bed at night. Like, what's going on? Right, labeling the pattern that you see as parents, because parents become so masterful in looking at patterns of behavior. Boy, my child's really off today, or my child's really been off for a week. Labeling what's going on, identifying it for your child, and then putting the sort of idea in their head that I notice it, there's something wrong, let's start figuring this out together. And older kids, teens, high schoolers, tend to not want help processing that, but it still is important to identify it and label it for them, and validate that you see they are having a hard time.
So what do you do if it's going on and you're thinking, well, I don't want this to continue. They're not doing their homework, or they're oversleeping and getting late, and all I'm doing is chasing them around the house and yelling at them. What's step one?
So I really think step one is to get some corroborating information. Reach out to the school, reach out to school support personnel to, for younger kids, that have a singular teacher, reach out to the teacher. I like to get some corroborating information. Is it just me that's seeing this? Is it just at home, or is it happening across settings? The three major settings in a child's life are home, school, and, sort of friends, social life, which would include like extracurriculars. I'd like to know if it's happening in other settings. So if you see something happening at home, but you don't see any issues at all with soccer practice, and you get information from a teacher that your child's actually doing fine, that gives you information. So now all right, there's particular issues or stressors at home that might be triggering this. And that would take a little bit more work to say, okay, yes, my spouse and I, we've been fighting a lot, or I'm very worried about financial issues. Maybe that's impacting the kids. To take a little deeper dive and look at what's going on that's causing this. What we know about adjustment disorders is that they tend to be related to particular stressors. And obviously, a global pandemic and the start of a new school year, with all the changes, are more obvious stressors. So it's taking that deep dive, getting corroborating information, and looking at their behavior across settings.
And sometimes they might be holding it together at school, but then maybe that's a good sign. They're comfortable enough in front of you that they let it all go at home, and you're seeing like the worst of it.
That's not uncommon, right? That the emotional energy it takes for your children to hold on to that stress. Again, adjustment is challenges and expectations. So to take that information in and hold on to all that, they're doing okay in school. They look like they're holding it all together. They're doing okay in soccer or volleyball or whatever, whatever kind of a extracurricular activity, and boom, they're exploding at home. But that gives you information. I'd be more concerned if it was across settings. That would actually be more problematic. But now it's at home. So is that a release factor? They're just releasing it at home. And that's when you start to, label it, validate it, and try to create some discussion around it. As a general rule, I think it's helpful to engage your children in the problem solving and not just try to fix it for them. Okay. Not saying, that's it, you're going to bed early or you're getting up a half hour early, right? Not throwing lots of things at them, because then that increases their resistance, but to engage in some amount of problem solving. The morning routines have been really hard. You don't have any time for breakfast. How can we do this differently? So engaging in some of that problem solving can be really, really helpful.
A good tip. Yes, I think our as fixer parents, we just want to say, hey, I know we're going to now do this chart. You're going to get stickers, and if you don't, all your screens are going away. Okay, so we might actually want to have a conversation. How do you know if it's something that you need really some help? I know you are a child psychologist right here in Connecticut. You're seeing folks. How do you know if you're like, this is beyond, and I think I need some professional help for my child?
So, again, if their behavior is becoming more disruptive and more dysregulated across settings, so you talk to the teacher, you talk to the school guidance counselor if they're in high school, and yep, they're having some difficulty in school. They're skipping classes. They're already now not turning in some homework. So, and they don't want to go to soccer practice, or they don't want to do any extracurriculars. You start to see it now across settings. That's when I have a deeper level of concern. I like to start with low level intervention. Maybe it's just a talk with the school counselor. Maybe it's a talk with the guidance counselor. Let's start with a lower level intervention, and the engaging in the problem solving. If it continues to go on, and the other piece to consider is maybe this started at the beginning of the summer, right? Maybe it hasn't just been going on for 2 weeks. If something's going on for 2 or 3 weeks, I would stay with a pretty low level intervention. Once it starts going on for a month, 2 months, now we need to sort of step in and look at getting your child some ancillary help. I am really concerned about those kids that did not do well in either remote or hybrid learning and have learning gaps. And therefore, their resistance is because now the school's just jumping in with their curriculum and they feel lost, right? So that's where, like, really getting some sense of partnership with the school and trying to come up with some alternate explanations for things, or getting some additional help can be really, really beneficial.
And just in case you're not already knowing how to do that, parents should know sometimes there may be a diagnosis of adjustment disorder or anxiety disorder or something going on that would qualify for your child even for a 504, which would be like a temporary thing that the school is going to actually sit down with you, and they are experts. They might know exactly what they want to do right away to help your kids. And that's something that we as parents have a right to in the public schools.
Yeah, and actually, Kara, that might be a whole topic in and of itself, is to talk about what kinds of support you can ask from schools.
Yep.
Right? There's levels of intervention, right? A 504 is, which is the term for the legislation that allows schools to provide a level of intervention that is below what would be considered special education. But yes, it provides for a level of intervention where they can provide additional support and recommendations to help your child. And I think very often schools want to do right by the kids in the school, right? They want them to be successful. You want them to be successful at home. You want them to be successful in school. And that's what schools want as well. I love to access the knowledge of teachers, because teachers have an amazing developmental baseline, right? If you have a fifth grader or a seventh grader or a ninth grader, right, that fifth grade teacher with, any number of years of experience can say, you know what, yes, your child struggled a little bit, but I've seen this many times before. I'm confident that they're going to settle in. And that really helps assure you, because they have such a wide range of experience and that developmental baseline that can be assuring for you. Because if you have a fifth grader and you've never had that's your oldest child, you don't necessarily have that baseline of experience. So yes, getting access to services and support in schools is absolutely critical. And there's steps towards that. But your school support people, your guidance counselors, they can help with that.
Yeah, I found sometimes the guidance counselors are really good, and they can, if you're a parent, we need support too. Moms and dads are probably struggling, going, what's going on? So reaching out can help the moms and dads too. Thank you for sharing some information, Doctor, and just letting everyone know that this is a real thing, and that adjustment disorder sometimes we're going to help a little bit at home and just acknowledging it's going to be enough, and other times you really might see this as an opportunity to really help your kid in the long term. Maybe there's some undiagnosed learning disabilities or things going on that is an opportunity to give your child some help.
Right. And there is the opportunity to engage with therapy, talk therapy. But I like to start with lower level interventions first. And I really like to start with the schools to get their perspective on a situation.
Sometimes it's just changing up the structure, and it can make a big difference. Dr. Laura Saunders, of course, you are at the Institute of Living, and that's a wonderful resource right here in the greater Hartford area. People can go on the website there and find out more information if they're looking for help in that realm as well. But we thank you for coming on CURES and sharing some information about adjustment disorder.
Always a pleasure, Kara.
Thanks, Doc. See you soon.
Thank you.